A millionaire's newborn screamed for 2 days straight, the anguished wails echoing through the hospital halls, a grief so deep that no doctor could calm it. Desperate and helpless, the father stood powerless, watching as the pain of his newborn seemed to tear at the very fabric of his soul. Then, a homeless woman stepped forward, her own baby lost just 6 months before. What happened next would leave the father shattered, his entire world crumbling before his eyes. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your world? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's begin. The cries were unrelenting. For 48 hours, the newborn screams pierced through the hospital like a siren no one could silence. The nurses moved in a daze, passing one another in a blur of exhaustion and helplessness. Every method had been tried, feeding, swaddling, rocking, but nothing worked. The infant, barely 3 days old, screamed until his face turned crimson, his tiny fists clenched like he was battling against a world that had already betrayed him. Each cry slammed against the walls, vibrating in the hearts of everyone around him. In the middle of the chaos stood Ethan Cole, his face pale and broken. The man who had conquered industries with unyielding strength now seemed as fragile as glass. His designer suit clung to him, disheveled and worn from sleepless nights. His tie hung loosely, eyes hollow, his shoes scuffed from pacing in circles through the sterile hallways. To the world outside, Ethan was an unshakable titan, a man whose empire was built on cold ambition and hard-edged deals. But here, in the sterile glow of the hospital, with his son crying for a mother who would never return, Ethan felt like nothing more than a shadow of the man he once was. Why can't anyone stop this? His voice cracked, raw with emotion, breaking through the endless screams. His hand trembled as he wiped away a tear. You're supposed to be the best hospital in the city. A young nurse with curly hair took a cautious step forward, her stethoscope swaying as she approached. Mr. Cole, we've tried everything, she said softly. His vitals are stable. He's feeding, breathing, but she stopped herself, her voice faltering. He's grieving. Ethan's eyes flashed toward her, anger and disbelief battling across his face.
He's just a baby, he snapped.
He doesn't even know what that means. But deep inside, a part of him already knew the truth. 2 days ago, his world shattered. Amelia, the love of his life, the woman who had softened every harsh edge of his existence, had slipped away during childbirth complications. Her laughter, her voice, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, gone. Just like that. Stolen in an instant. Nothing, not even all the wealth in the world, could bring her back. Now, all that remained was this baby. This child who cried as if his small heart already understood the crushing absence. A younger nurse, her voice barely a whisper, spoke up from behind him. Babies know, sir. They can feel what's missing. Ethan's fists clenched, every muscle in his body ready to lash out. He wanted to scream at them, demand a miracle, some way to stop the agony. But when he turned toward the crib, his knees buckled. His son's tiny body was writhing, arms flailing, his mouth open in a silent scream of grief too deep for words. The sight tore through him. Ethan would have traded every inch of his empire, every deal he'd ever made, just to silence that sound. But nothing, not even his fortune, could buy peace. The hall was thick with silence, the air suffocating under the weight of the baby's cries. Doctors and nurses in their dark scrubs stood like statues, helpless. Visitors avoided the scene, unwilling to look at the broken man and his broken child. The cries were raw, primal, as if the baby was reaching for something lost, something no one could return. Ethan sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. His voice cracked, barely a whisper. "He'll cry himself to death." The curly-haired nurse knelt beside him, her eyes soft with understanding. "No, sir," she said gently. "He'll survive. But he won't stop, not until he feels what he's lost. Not unless someone," her voice trembled, choking on the unsaid words. "Someone gives back what was taken." Ethan's head shot up, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "Don't you dare say that," he hissed through clenched teeth. But his lips trembled, betraying him, as the baby's cries climbed higher, sharper, cutting through the very core of him. Ethan pressed his hands over his ears, but it was useless. The sound pierced him to the bone. The cry came from within him, a deep ache that matched the noise in the room. Then footsteps, slow, uneven, dragging across the linoleum floor with the weight of someone who wasn't wanted. Eyes turned. At the end of the corridor stood a young black woman, out of place in the glaring white light. Dirt smeared her cheek, her brown coat torn at the shoulder, a faded green shirt hanging loosely underneath. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes tired, but fixed on the crib where the baby thrashed. She looked like she didn't belong, but something about her drew the room's attention. Gasps rippled through the staff. The curly-haired nurse stiffened, pointing in disbelief. "Her? What's she doing here?" Murmurs grew louder. "Is she homeless? Who let her in?" Ethan shot to his feet, his face hardening with anger. He was ready to order security to remove her. His voice rang through the hall, sharp and demanding. But the woman didn't flinch. She stood there, eyes never leaving the baby who struggled in the crib, trapped in an invisible battle. "Get her out." Ethan snapped, grief making his voice break. But before anyone could act, the woman spoke, her voice soft yet firm enough to silence the room. "He's not crying because he's sick," she said quietly. "He's crying because she's not here." The words hit Ethan like a punch. His chest tightened, breath catching. The woman stepped closer, her torn coat brushing the floor, her hands trembling. "I know that sound," she continued, voice thick with emotion. "6 months ago, I heard it every night. My little boy cried the same way. He wasn't hungry. He wasn't sick. He just wanted me close." Her voice cracked, forcing her to swallow before finishing. And when he was gone, the silence that followed was more deafening than the cries. Ethan's jaw went slack, his blood draining from his face. He staggered back a step, staring at her as though she had pulled his deepest, most hidden pain into the light. "You lost a baby?" His voice cracked, raw with realization. Her eyes shimmered, tears carving tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. She nodded, her words steady but heavy. 6 months ago. Pneumonia. I had nothing, no money, no help. I held him until he couldn't breathe anymore. And now, every time I hear a cry like that, it rips me open all over again. The staff stood motionless, as if time had frozen. The curly-haired nurse pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide in disbelief. No one spoke. There were no questions in the face of a grief so deep, it left the air thick with sorrow. The woman's gaze softened as she looked at the baby. "Let me hold him, just for a moment. Please, I can help." Ethan hesitated. Fear gripped him. The fear of trusting a stranger, of letting go, of being wrong. But his son's cries were sharper than any doubt, each one slicing deeper than the last. Finally, with shaking hands, Ethan nodded. The nurse reluctantly stepped aside, her eyes lingering as the woman moved toward the crib. Her hands trembled as she reached down, lifting the baby gently. She pressed him to her chest, her faded green shirt smelling of the streets, but her heartbeat steady, her arms strong. The baby's cries faltered for the first time in days. His body jerked, then softened. the noise turning into hiccups, then quieter sobs. His cheek pressed into her collarbone, as if he recognized her pain, as if he knew she understood. Tears slid down her face as she whispered, almost to herself, "Sure. It's all right, little one. I know. I know what it's like to miss her. I know what it's like to want her back." Ethan's knees nearly buckled. His hand pressed against the wall to steady himself. His empire, his wealth, his power, none of it could ease his son's suffering. But this woman, with nothing but grief in her heart, could. After a long moment, she turned toward him. Her arms tightened around the infant one last time before she stepped closer. With a quiet tenderness, she placed the baby into Ethan's shaking hands. "He doesn't need a miracle," she murmured softly. "He just needs to know he's not alone. Hold him so he feels you're here." Ethan pulled his son close, pressing him against his chest. The baby let out a faint whimper, then settled into soft hiccups, his little fists slowly relaxing. Tears streamed down Ethan's face, soaking into the baby's hair. He looked at the woman again, his throat tight with unsaid words. Her eyes were swollen, but behind them lay a heavier sorrow, a mother who had comforted another child because she could no longer soothe her own. "You lost him just 6 months ago," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. She nodded, her chin trembling, too overcome to speak. Ethan felt the weight of her grief, a pain so vast it nearly crushed him. He had almost turned her away, almost dismissed her as nothing. But now, she had given his son something he couldn't: comfort, even if just for a moment, with the love she could no longer offer her own child. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Ethan's voice cracked, the words raw and honest. The woman's eyes widened. For the first time in months, someone had said those words to her, not out of pity, but with genuine understanding. In that sterile hallway, two strangers from different worlds were connected by the same grief, the cry of a child calling for what was lost. What would you do if this were your child? Don't scroll past. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments, hit like if it touched you, and subscribe for more powerful true stories.